Coming up, 2 different rocket launches.
A super slow motion fairing test.
And welcome to Spacevidcast episode 6.14 for Saturday, May 25th, 2013. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, is the beautiful, lovely, and wonderful, talented Carrie Ann Higginbotham. Will be your hosts for this episode this afternoon. Now, before we get started with some space news, we did want to point out that we do have a brand new poster available in our poster series. Check this out. This one is entitled Space Rocks, and this can be downloaded at spacevidcast.com/posters, and actually right now it's available only for purchase, and you can buy this one, or you can download it or purchase the other poster we've got in the series. And the nice thing is that they coordinate with each other, so that you can kind of see how this series is building out, and they are absolutely gorgeous.
They're devastatingly beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, and I think this one's a little bit more my favorite. I do love the first one, of course, very, very much so. This one has a slight sort of Art Nouveau-ish sort of thing going for it. Not that the other one doesn't, but I don't know, maybe it's just the purples. The purples kind of speak
You like
to
the
me
purples?
a little bit.
So the idea behind these posters is that you'll be able to go, you can either just buy them and hang them in your house as like, hey, look how awesome these are. And when people come over, they can look at this artwork you have and say, oh, this is kind of cool. Tell me a little bit about this. Mm-hmm. Start some conversations about space. Or if you'd like, we're not making you buy them. You can actually download them and then print them out on your printer and post them around town. As people have mentioned, they're very dark, which means they chew through ink if you've got an inkjet printer. We know the rest of this series will likely remain dark, but when we start the next series of posters, the next themed set, we'll try to find something lighter so it's easier for you guys to print out. We'll also make available, hopefully sometime soon, the editable version so you can translate it into whatever language you want. The whole point, we want to get people excited about space. What a great way to do it. So getting straight into some space news, Vega, the ESA has launched Vega, which is their small rocket, and this is the second time that they've done that. Here we've got just a teeny tiny bit of launch footage. It was at night, and it just kind of disappeared almost immediately. So
yeah.
Here's what we do have.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage, décollage.
And at that point, we're done. Right, we've pretty much lost it into the clouds, and it's a lot like the
but we have a lovely computer animation.
We did. There was a really nice computer animation of the vehicle. So the neat thing about that is that was the second launch ever of the Vega rocket, and it was pretty much requalifying. Well, not requalifying. It was continuing the qualifications of the vehicle, and it had something called VESPA, which is Vega Secondary Payload Adapter, which allows multiple payloads to be deployed on this fairly small rocket.
I was very upset by that name. I thought they actually had a Vespa on there.
That's funny.
And I was like, let's go!
So this mission was 160 minutes,
yes.
About twice the duration of the last mission. So they're making some pretty good strides with the vehicle, and it was a smashing success. So awesome.
Don't say smashing.
Why? No, well, no, it wasn't like an exploding success.
Okay.
Smashing success.
Okay.
I don't know. It still works.
Success.
Also launches recently, we had a Delta IV, and that was launching the Wideband Global Satellite Communications Spacecraft. Check out this launch coverage. It's a little funny. Here, check it out.
T-minus 10.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. We have liftoff. We have RS-27 main engine. We have liftoff. The United Launch Alliance Delta IV rocket carrying WGS-5 for the United States Air Force. The wideband global SATCOM satellite provides significantly increased capacity to our nation's leaders, warfighters, and international partners.
Yeah, so
This makes Ben laugh every flippin' time he watches it. And the first thing, he watched it a couple of times, so gave himself a wonderful asthmatic fit after laughing. But I first of all, I noticed that the counting seemed really bizarrely off. It was like 10, 9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 1, 1, there it goes. And I was really confused by all of that. And then he's like, and the whole vehicle's on fire. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so he actually had to show me that the fire is so much that it goes down and then back up and onto the vehicle.
Well, the vehicle itself wasn't.
Well, not the vehicle. I apologize.
But yeah, there's
visually,
visually just, and that's with normal Delta IV launches, is just that the plume comes up and just licks the entire first freaking stage. If you go back and freeze frame it, it's like this huge ball of fire going up the side.
For some reason he finds hilarious.
I think it's awesome.
And sure.
All right, a couple other quick things. SpaceX has released some slow motion footage of their fairing. This is the
fairing testing.
The fairing testing. This is the very top part of the rocket, and this is the first time that a Falcon 9 will have a fairing on it. Remember, the only fairing that a SpaceX rocket had was on the Falcon 1, which is substantially smaller. And as I understand it, this is one of the largest fairings for a rocket in this class, ever.
Oh.
So here, check out fairing coverage, fairing separation. This is slow-mo from
really cool,
yeah. Check it out. Here you go. I love this shot. Check that out.
That's the money shot right there.
This is gonna happen much, much faster than that, obviously. Yeah. So yeah, that is what will enable SpaceX to deploy satellites into space, not just Dragon. And so that's a necessary part to protect the satellite. And before we go to break, we want to let you know that Planetary Resources has an announcement coming up on May 29th at 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and that's 1700 hours Coordinated Universal Time. And that's basically going to give students, teachers, and public access to some of the innovative technology that they're working on. It sounds like it's going to be a pretty exciting announcement. So I believe it's planetaryresources.com/webcast or live stream. It's planetaryresources.com/live stream is where you can watch the live coverage of that. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about the difference between science fact and fiction and whether sci-fi is good for sci-fi. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination, and nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving, through the heat keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire walking to be free.
And welcome back to the show. So today's main topic is science fact and science fiction. For mostly talking about how science fiction, and this comes from the new Star Trek movie, right? Because awesome Star Trek movie, I loved it. But there were some moments of science fiction that were more fiction-y than facty.
Like anti-gravity?
Yeah, some of the gravity, like...
Some people were jumping 60 feet in the air. I'm just going to say...
So let's ignore the gravity for a moment. But the fundamental... So we saw the movie. It was awesome. We enjoyed it. It was, it was Star Wars with a Star Trek name on it. But that got me to thinking, does science fiction help science fact? Does having these sci-fi movies which create these worlds of things that we can't do help us try to explore the stars? I think a lot of people that aren't space nerds sometimes forget that we don't have warp drive.
Right.
It's not just this really easy jaunt to go to Mars. I mean, it's one of the hardest things humanity will ever do.
Right.
And it's not just something that you can just kind of go and do, but we see all these science fiction movies, and they make it look really, really easy. So that's the question of the show. And I'd love to hear your comments on the YouTube page, on the Spacevidcast live page, as many different places as possible. Does science fantasy help actual science grow?
Or hurt?
Or hurt. Does it help or hurt? Or neither?
I will take help.
You will take help.
Yep.
Okay, I will take hurt.
Okay.
How do you figure it helps?
Because I have heard a number of people, one person in particular who, growing up, was watching TV, saw Star Trek, very specifically Star Trek, was really inspired by it, and then started to study more science, all that sort of thing in school, and got involved, got a job at NASA, was working at in Houston, actually, for a while in mission control, all because of this sort of like, wow, that looks really cool and awesome. I kind of want to do something like that. How do I do that? And then eventually did do something similar. No, it's not the same thing. We can't all be, uhura, with speaking 3 million different kinds of languages. Yeah. Captain, I'm getting something.
I just put a little mini dragon in my ear.
Well, it was available. It's okay. But yeah, and I think that happens more often than we give credit for, and not just TV and not just movies, but including books and whatnot. Today is National Take Your Towel Day. It's or Take a Towel with You Day, right? I so apologize, you guys. I know I screwed that up, but forgive me for a moment. There's been lots of books, science fiction, science fantasy, that have also inspired people to go out and find a job, whether to be an asteroid miner or to work at mission control, or even something, on a slightly smaller scale. So I think there's a lot of influence there. It sparks the imagination, and so then it makes you go into, or inspires you to go into such fields. So, STEAM fields, as it were.
Well, there's an argument there. So, Jeffrey actually had a couple of interesting points.
Yes.
He said first, and this is in the live chat room at spacevidcast.com/live. Jeffrey said, sci-fi often inspires those who end up exploring the stars and making it happen. Who here, meaning everyone in the chat room, didn't watch Star Wars as a kid, which is correct. And then
those older than us, like Vax, where Star Wars wasn't available when he was a kid.
Oh, you just called him out.
I love you, Vax. But
the flip side of this coin, because I'm taking the I don't think so. I mean, right. You're totally right? I mean, when you look at where we're at, sometimes we forget that Star Trek. Like, let's look at Star Trek Next Generation, where things like the pad, PADD, the things that they held and they were doing stuff. Here's a pad. This is an iPad Mini, right? There it is. This I think does more than what they had on Star Trek. Your cell phone, this smart computer in your pocket, does way more than any of the little communicators that they had, the original, right? Yeah, exactly. Right? I've got a whole freaking computer right here. Right. They could only do basic two-way communication. Then again, they were going from a planet surface to a starship, but you just get a cellular. Blah, blah, blah. Exactly. Right? So technology has really done some kind of amazing things. It is actually remarkable how much an iPad looks like a Star Trek. Weren't you supposed
to take the other side? Wasn't this supposed to be a debate? We weren't supposed to agree.
But at the same time, exactly, and that's what I was getting to. At the same time, the issue is it can set unrealistic expectations as to where we're going to be.
Okay.
Star Trek Next Generation came out in the 80s, I want to say it was.
Yes.
And we didn't get to where we're at until like now, just a few years ago. Looking at 2001: A Space Odyssey, we were supposed to be actively in space before the year 2000. Moon bases, all that fun jazz. And, we just didn't. So does it set unrealistic expectations of where humanity should be, and then lead us to a level of disappointment when we figure out that we are not in the future, that we're in the present?
Well, you have to set goals, right?
Okay, yep.
I mean, there's only a couple different ways to motivate people, right?
Right.
Like, here's a carrot at the end of a stick. Come get the carrot. Or, hey, if you don't go get that stupid carrot, or, what have you, you'll be killed over on this side, right? I mean, you only have so many different kinds of motivations, and you have to sort of set some kind of goal, or there has to be some kind of fantasy that, who's to say that we would have come to a tricorder sort of situation, or a PADD sort of situation, should that fantasy have not have been thought up at some point.
What about Apollo 18?
What about Apollo 18?
So Apollo 18 feeds the conspiracy theorists, right? It's the secret mission that never existed, and everyone...
So the movie Apollo 18, be very clear.
Well, there was no Apollo 18.
For those of you who were unsure if there was an Apollo 18 or not, there was not, but there was a movie named such things.
All right. There was going to be an Apollo 18, but it was canceled. So Apollo 18, the movie, feeds into the conspiracy theorists, which... how does that help science at all?
Sure, but then there's great movies like Love or Moon that have a lot of while yes, it's still fantasy, it's still fiction to a certain extent. It still has a fairly realistic version of what it's like to be in space, particularly alone on a remote island, a remote planet, remote what have you, etc., etc. There's plenty of those kinds of movies that are trying to set realistic expectations, or not even trying to set realistic expectations, but using realistic expectations in order to tell a story that's still fantasy filled.
L3X says, who cares about realistic expectations if you're dreaming of tomorrow?
Exactly.
Mars 1.
What about them?
Well, is that 2023? Are they really going to be able to do it by 2020? I don't know,
but they've set a goal, haven't they? And even if what's the saying? You have to at least shoot for the moon, and even if you don't reach that, at least you'll end up among the stars. You have to set a goal of sorts, and who cares if you don't reach it by 2023? If they hit it at 2030, they still freaking did it, didn't they?
I suppose. I guess, but at what cost? So if they did it, but now everyone's looking at the industry and laughing at the industry, and that dries up money from the industry. Now, sure, maybe they did it in 2030, but because of the way that was gone about, they can't afford to continue to do it. We end up with flags and footprints again. So is that good or bad?
No, I think just if the money starts to dry up from the industry because the naysayers are too many and the believers are too few, then I think it's just the believers who will get off the planet, and all the naysayers will be here when it blows up. And all the smart people will be far, far away, and they can procreate, and it'll be fine.
So we want to know. It's hard for me to debate the point that I don't necessarily
which is why I gave it to you.
I don't necessarily agree with it. That was really hard for me to debate. Really awesome stuff. Actually, the chat room is hilarious because they're talking about... we all have to agree that Voyager and Enterprise just sucked, as long as...
Yeah, that's fine. We can all be on the same page for that.
It's weird. So I'm apparently showing my age. I did not like Voyager, and I did not like Enterprise. But some people, and I've got a coworker at work who's about my age. He actually liked Enterprise, but he's wrong. But all the young'uns at work, they like Voyager and Enterprise and shows like that. And they're like, ugh, TNG, that's so old. I'm like, no, I grew up with TNG. It's not old. That makes me old too.
DS9 is where it's at, so y'all are wrong.
DS9's okay, but
DS9. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is, we'd like to hear your opinions. Pro, con, a mixture of both, because I'm sure that's usually what it is anyway.
I want to know, actually, in your opinion,
yes,
iPad mini, right?
Sure.
This was on Star Trek.
Basically,
This was basically on Star Trek. Would we have had this, like this, had Star Trek not shown us this?
I guess my point with that
would we have gotten there anyhow? My
particular point with that is the tricorder X Prize that's going on.
Yep.
I don't know that we would have thought necessarily of having a tricorder. You know what I'm saying? Like right now we're working towards getting a tricorder because we all saw it on Star Trek. So we all thought that is the coolest thing. And somebody thought about it. Somebody, made this up. Right? Wrote it down, presented it to us like, no, this is just a cool thing. I just think it'd be neat. And because it's fantasy, I can just do that. And now we're working towards actually creating that thing. The iPad mini or something similar to that, I could see that. I can kind of, even without having that sort of presentation, but tricorder specifically, I think is a really fantastic idea. And we all, as soon as we saw it, we all went, well, duh. Why don't we have that? So I guess that's more. All
right, like she said, leave your comments on the YouTube page, on our webpage, wherever you'd like. We'd love to know what you think. And speaking of comments, when we come back, we're going to be looking at the comments from the last show that we did, talking about not Deep Space Industries, Mars 1. Mars 1. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Commander Chris Hadfield, and this is what it looks like when I wring out a towel. This is one of our washcloths. We have amazing washcloths. They pick up everything. Here's a water bottle. And I will put some water on the washcloth. Here we go. So you can see that guy's getting nice and wet. It's a very wet washcloth. I don't know if you can see that. It's a wet washcloth. Got my hands right there and I am squeezing. There we go. A lot of water getting all over my hands. A lot of water on my hands. A lot of water on my countertop. Squeezing. It's getting more difficult to squeeze the water out. So I'm squeezing harder. That is what it looks like when I wring out a towel.
Chris, you can clean that up.
And welcome back. So let's take a look at some of the comments from last week's show, shall we? I'm sorry, I get yelled at when I say last week's show because we were actually off for a little bit. Sorry about that, guys. Our last show, 6.13, talking about Mars 1. This comment comes from Lee, who says, gives us a link and says, this is the link to a brilliant interview with Boss Lanthrop. I can't pronounce his name. From Mars 1. He's the guy who started Mars 1. Mm-hmm. He really goes into details about their selection process and the way to achieve their goals. I found out a lot about Mars 1 from this, and since listening to it and feeling way more convinced that this thing is for real. It may not succeed, but I think it will definitely give it a good shot. You know, and that's completely possible, right? I mean, if you listen to the link, he does kind of say, look, I realize that our timeline is ambitious and you know, there's a lot that needs to be worked out there, but, you know, we think we can make this go. And he actually does have reasonable answers for a lot of that stuff. So definitely worth, it is like a 90-minute interview. I mean, it's a long, it's a bit, but it's definitely worth it if you want to learn more about Mars 1. This one comes from Bill, who says, well, the details for Mars 1 can't be fully developed yet. When they go, they'll go with the best of the industry at that time. 8 to 10 years from now, we'll be in a different technology spectrum. They seem to be banking on future technology whose details aren't yet fully known. Maybe?
Yes and no. I mean, what's the argument that you always use? The physics don't change.
Yeah,
right.
Much.
So I mean, there's only
They don't change much.
I suppose there's only so much development that can happen in the next 8 to 10 years. You know, I would love to be proven wrong. Don't get me wrong. For sure, if somebody comes in tomorrow with a very viable working warp drive, you know, Iron Man sort of situation, then abso-freaking-lutely, that would be amazing. But at the same time, when we look at what we've done in the last 8 to 10 years, and you know, you can just project. You know, take the Kurzweilian glasses and put them on and look at the next 8 to 10 years.
Kind of.
Yes.
Look at Apollo.
Okay.
Right? We went from nothing to man on the moon in 9 years. So you can look at that, but you also have these bursts where you have this, like, there's a fundamental force behind it and it bursts the technology and everything
forward. And a whole
forward.
government.
And a lot of money, but we're seeing a shift in that, right? Look at how much SpaceX has done in just the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. You know, 3 different rockets, 3 different engines, an entire spacecraft, actual flights. I mean that.
Yeah, actual flights, and they've only docked with the ISS twice?
Never. They've only berthed with the International Space Station. But regardless, they've done all of these things in the last 10 years. And they're already at the point with berthing with the International Space Station. Who's to say that in the next 10 years they can't
We are talking about landing humans on Mars, not killing them, and sustaining their life.
Yes. I'm just saying it's possible.
Yeah, well, birthing, sustaining. Those are
they
two different things.
went from nothing to fully funding themselves and getting up there.
All right.
I mean, yeah, they're different things, but you know that spectrum you can push forward. You can do really cool things.
I hope I'm wrong.
All right, fair enough. All right, Chris says Mars 1 is a fantasy, although it is raising awareness of our missing human exploration program. If either Mars 1 or Inspiration Mars gets close to launching, I bet that would raise enough excitement to get NASA's budget increased. This would be great for everyone, especially NASA's partners.
So many things. So many things. I have so many comments, like too many things all at once. My first initial response is, Sure, great. Everyone loves a little bit of competition. A little cooperation is even a little bit better. And yet, at the same time, just because somebody else is doing it doesn't mean NASA's suddenly going to wake up and go, oh, hey, that would be awesome. And it's not even really NASA. So I apologize for pointing the finger directly at them because it isn't NASA who's making these decisions. But the people who are making the decisions on behalf of NASA, it's not like they're going to suddenly wake up and say, hey, we actually need to kick some butt in this particular arena. I fear that the people who make NASA's decisions for them will look at somebody else and go, yeah, that's super awesome, great, good job with that, and not do anything.
Maybe
another rover.
That's where SLS comes from. You're referring to the senators and congressmen who basically have said, "Look, NASA, you're going to build this Uber robot," and NASA has said, "Rocket," and NASA has said, "We can't afford it. We don't really want it. It doesn't have a mission to anywhere." And ultimately, SLS, which is the next generation NASA rocket, is just a jobs program. Is to keep people employed in certain districts so that the politicians can keep their jobs.
SLS, the Space Launch System, which is the next variation after the space shuttle.
So, giving NASA more money, will that actually increase anything? I mean, right now NASA is kind of starved for like planetary sciences and these other really awesome things that they do. We're not ragging on NASA. NASA does amazing, awesome things. And then they also have SLS. So all this awesome stuff going on over here, plus SLS. If we can just lob SLS off and remove that money back into the other awesome things they do, NASA would actually be in a really great place.
Yeah.
But SLS is such this big behemoth, it's sucking these other programs dry.
Right.
So I think that's one. Let's say we give NASA more money. That's not to say that they're going to put that money into those amazing, awesome programs.
Right.
It could all go into SLS.
It could go into this huge black hole, which is extremely unfortunate. And I think it's Bob Zubrin, who is a huge guy behind trying to get to Mars sooner rather than later, of course, has always sort of said that even if you have that goal, even if America specifically has that goal of getting to Mars, you have to make it in that 10-year time span. You have to make it in that window, because what happens is that we choose a new president every 4 years, and a president can only be president twice. That only gives him 8 years, or her, I suppose. That only gives the president 8 years to sort of make this program happen.
And at that 8-year mark, if you're close enough,
usually
you're probably not going to kill the program because you're like on the verge of doing something great.
Right.
And the president wouldn't want to be the one. I mean, they're going to want to take that glory.
But if you set a goal that's 30, 40, 60 years out, it's gonna die, because the next president's gonna go, I don't think so, and rechange everything up. So you have to have a realistic goal. It has to be within that 10-year time span. All of those different things, and those are just a few of the stumbling blocks that NASA or America has in their space program to make these sorts of things happen. So while, yes, like I said before, while I think it's great that all these other, whether it be private industry or other countries getting behind these huge Mars projects, I don't think that necessarily is going to do much to, like I said, the people who basically make the decisions on behalf of NASA to make their Mars program go, if that makes any sense.
I accidentally skipped one from Tom, so we're going to go backwards one. This one is from Tom, and he says, 78,000 applicants times application fee is over $2 million. A sucker is born every minute. And this is in reference to the, what is it, like $35 Mars One application fee.
Yeah.
Maybe. Or maybe it's a bunch of people who want to dream. And even if it's $35 and you're inspired, that's very cheap inspiration.
And again, they're not getting to Mars on $2 million. So it's not like they're fleecing people. And then, I don't know, $2 million doesn't sound like a huge amount of money to me, I guess.
I Heart Letters says, and this was a much longer comment. You're going to want to go back to Spacevidcast and read this. But at least in my case, Benjamin is absolutely correct. We could just end the comment there. Absolutely correct in stating that, if anything, Mars One is, quote, creating conversations about space that wouldn't normally happen, unquote. I'm officially excited about space. Out of my newfound excitement, my friend also led me to this very show, which I will be watching every week. Thanks. Awesome! We love new viewers.
We do love new viewers. And
we have tens and tens of viewers now.
At least. And so that also goes back to my very wisely chosen argument of SciFi in favor of SciFact, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, but if you only ever focus on... we'll come back to that.
But yeah,
leave your comments.
Yeah, okay, fine.
This one comes from John. He asks, why did no one mention Solo at watchsolo.com when talking about Mars One? I actually had no idea about that show. It's freaking hilarious. It's basically a show about a guy in the exact Mars One situation where they've developed this reality show. He's going to Mars, and on his way to Mars, and he's this off-the-wall character, just all over the board emotionally, and on his way to Mars, they cancel the show. He doesn't even make it to Mars, and they've canceled the show.
Ben found it hilarious. I didn't find it quite as funny, but, so to each his own, I suppose.
And finally this week, Stefan asks, or Steven, I don't know, which do you have more confidence in, the Space Launch System, which is SLS, or Mars One?
Mars One.
Yeah. That's what I'm going to have to go with on that one. SLS is Constellation 2.0, and we all know what happened to Constellation. It's the exact same thing repeated. They just did not learn their lessons from the past, and so they're doomed to repeat them. And that's exactly what's happening. So it's not that we hate big heavy lift rockets, or that we hate NASA, or that we don't want something to go. We just want the rocket scientists themselves to design the rockets and not the senators, forcing their hand in certain technologies in order to keep people employed. That will basically guarantee a overcost, overrun, really late rocket that will probably never fly, and or just Ares 1X. Anyhow, that is our show for this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. We're going to attempt to do a little bit of Spacevidcast after dark if we can, but we're having some technical issues, so we may just skip that. So if you're an Epic subscriber, I apologize. We may just not have an after dark episode for this show. But on that note, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next week.